You're listening to the Fanalist Podcast. Follow on Twitter at TheFanalystPod.
This event belongs to Jack Nicklaus, and we have him to thank for so many of the game's best flocking to this event. It's the Memorial Tournament at Muirfield Village Golf Club in Dublin, Ohio. Definitely all of the game's biggest stars, well, most of the world's biggest stars will be coming out to this event. A notable withdrawal is Justin Rose, but a whole bunch more of the game's best will be here. Jordan Spieth, Jason Day, Ricky Fowler, Dustin Johnson, Hideki Matsuyama, Bubba Watson, Patrick Reed, Rory McIlroy, Phil Mickelson, Matt Kuchar, and there's really a lot more great players that are going to be at this event. It's a 7,392-yard par 72, and winners usually score between 12 to 16 under par. So this is the real warm-up course for the U.S. Open. The real way to win here is to hit a lot of fairways and have a solid mid-range putting game. Tyson, how excited are you for this event? And let's make some picks. Who do you think is kind of a favorite coming in here? Because it definitely has to be either Jason Day, Rory McIlroy, or Jordan Spieth. All three of them, however, are coming in off of a victory.
This event has always been one that I've always looked forward to during the year. Tiger Woods, seeing him win here 5 times, it's always sort of been that exciting tournament, and the course is always one that you recognize as being one of the more signature courses on tour. So this is one that I'm definitely excited for.
If you look at past winners, going from 2009 until last year, Woods, Rose, Stricker, Woods, Kuchar, Matsuyama, and then David Lingmerth. You know, the last two, Matsuyama is kind of an up-and-coming player. Lingmerth, however, that was his first PGA Tour victory. It was a bit of a surprise as he, knocked out Rose on the third hole of a playoff. It was a surprising year because this course is usually only beaten by the greats.
Absolutely, and it seems like you have to have a good track record beforehand to win at this golf course, so that's what I expect this year, to see guys who have had previous success, whether it be a top 5, top 10, or even a previous win, to do well at this course and end up winning.
So if I had to give you the top 3 players in the game right now, Day, Spieth, and McIlroy, who do you think is most likely to win this week?
I would have to go with Jordan Spieth. When he catches on fire, he keeps running. And he was off to a little bit of a slump after the Masters, had that tough finish at the HP Byron where we failed to win the tournament after holding the 54-hole lead. Now that he finally got over that after his disaster at the Masters, I feel like he's going to get onto this streak that we saw a few years ago when he was just unbeatable. And I have him favored in this week. Had it tied for 3rd last year. Seems to have a good track record with the course. I don't see why not.
Yeah, if you were following along with this past week's tournament, it was actually really close down the stretch between him and Harris English. And then on that 17th hole, forget the chip in for birdie. Okay, before that, he actually had a shot go off a Marshall, and then his approach went off the grandstand, and then from there, he chipped in for that birdie. Now, when you saw him hitting the Marshall and then the grandstand, it started to feel a lot like the Masters, where, here he was falling apart right at the end, and then, he was just as surprised as everyone else was. Playing partner Ryan Palmer just stared and couldn't believe the shot he'd made, and he ended up taking the Dean and DeLuca event in pretty good fashion.
And if you look at the other top 3 players, McIlroy and Day, they don't have nearly the same track record that Spieth has had. Day missing the cut and tied for 54th. McIlroy outside the top 50 and then tied for 15th in 2014. But coming into this event, I feel like Spieth is going to carry on his success from last week and really start moving toward that U.S. Open.
If I had to make a pick, though, between Spieth, Day, and McIlroy, I would take Day. I'm a big Jason Day fan. I love his game, and I think he's really going to fit this course well. Jordan Spieth, yeah, he's coming off a win. He's, has to be one of the favorites. But all 3 of these guys are hot right now, all coming off wins, and I'm going to give it to Jason Day, the number 1 player currently in the world. How about some more picks, Tyson? Looking a little bit deeper into this field. Actually, let me give you this. Guess which player I am, okay? This is a horse for the course. In the last 10 years, he's played this course 8 times. Tied for 26th, tied for 15th, 1st, tied for 2nd, tied for 8th, tied for 5th, tied for 10th, tied for 13th. Who's the horse for the course?
No idea.
Matt Kuchar.
Oh, I was going to actually guess Matt Kuchar. All right. I have him as a top pick as well. My picks right now are Spieth, Kuchar, and Furyk. Kuchar, like you said, won 2013. The next 2 years in top 25, has looked great as of late. All top 10 finishes in the last few events, and has 11 top 25 finishes this year. So, I mean, how can you not go with this guy? He's hot as hell. I like the looks of Matt Kuchar right now.
My only thing with Matt Kuchar is I feel like he's one of those guys who he's a constant lingerer. He's always in it. He's one of the best on tour from a consistency standpoint. He's always going to be around, but he just never really seems to get it done. He doesn't win enough tournaments. So I don't have Matt Kuchar as a pick to win, but definitely looking at his track record here, he has to be on the short list. Somebody who I'm actually going to go, it's not off the board, but somebody who doesn't get enough talk and really a great player, playing after his father, Bill Haas. T4, T8, T18 the last 3 years on this course. He's a guy who I feel like is looking to really get on a good stretch before the U.S. Open, and I like the way that his skill set matches up for this course.
Yeah, but I feel that he's more of a poor man's Matt Kuchar, where he's consistent and he does well in courses that he feels good at. Like another one would be at the Humana.
Yeah.
He always does well at that tournament, but he's only won it, I believe, one time. He doesn't win that many tournaments. And Matt Kuchar, he's actually won here before, and he has had success in other tournaments as well.
Yeah, I like how you make that comparison, how he's kind of a poor man's Matt Kuchar. I think he's more of a, he just hasn't won enough. He's just like Matt Kuchar in that sense, where he just hasn't won enough for how good he is.
And yet he has a FedEx Cup too, which is just weird.
He does have a FedEx Cup, which is quite impressive. But I don't know. I feel like I'm going to go with Bill Haas. But, Matt Kuchar is definitely a quality pick for this course. He's going to probably be one of my one-and-done picks in a pool that I'm in. I'm probably going to go with Kuchar and Haas just because I don't want to use top players at an event with a smaller purse. But Kuchar and Haas, two great picks. If I had to go with one or the other, I think I'd go with Bill Haas just because I feel like, I like the way that he's gone the last 3 seasons, going T18, T8, T4. Looks like he's really kind of playing up for that spot. And of course, he's right now trying to get a win, trying to cement a spot at the Olympics, trying to cement a spot deeper in the FedEx Cup, President's Cup team, all that jazz.
As of late, though, he hasn't been that impressive. I mean, T43, T47 is his last one, and then he got cut at the Wells Fargo. I don't like him as much as I do Matt Kuchar, just because Kuchar's looked great as of late. He hasn't really had any flaws in his game, and I feel like coming into this event where he feels good, a course that he recognizes, I like his chances more than I do Bill Haas. But I can see why you pick Haas.
Yeah, both of them, like I said, respectable picks for this course. But if I had to take somebody who was going to win this week, if I had just one pick, just one guy, I would take Jason Day. And even after him, before Haas and Kuchar, you have to take Spieth, McIlroy, or one of the other great players on tour. That's why this event is so fantastic. There are so many top players in this field, and that's why you got to give credit to Jack Nicklaus, the legacy that he cemented. He's got so much respect from players. They all come out for this one tournament that, there's not much special about it besides the fact that it's Jack Nicklaus's event, and it becomes one of the toughest events on the schedule. And I just love the way that this field is matching up for this one. How about you talk about Jim Furyk, another guy you were kind of keen on?
Yeah, he's kind of a sleeper just because he hasn't played a lot this year. He's coming off of wrist injury after the 2015 season. He's only played in 3 events so far, so it's kind of an iffy pick to choose from. But, I mean, over the last 4 years at this tournament, he's finished in the top 5, had a top 5 last year, and he's a great golfer to pick at a course that he's familiar with. He just seems like a consistent golfer and a veteran that you always have to look to be in the mix, at least when he's on his game.
When I do look at that long list of, favorites in the field, some of the guys that I will push to the side and not really go with for this week are guys like Dustin Johnson and Bubba Watson. Yes, they just bomb the ball, but I really think you have to hit more fairways than these guys do to compete this week. Someone like Phil Mickelson could kind of have a great performance this week. He always seems to play well the week before the Masters at the Shell Houston Open. He really likes to go out at these events prior to the majors. and play well. So maybe a guy like Phil Mickelson could play really well. Of course, we've mentioned Kuchar. Furyk, he's the caliber of player that wins at this course. As we mentioned, past winners, Woods, Rose, Stricker, Kuchar, Matsuyama. Furyk can slip right in there. He belongs with those players.
He's an accurate hitter, and a guy like Steve Stricker is like the perfect example for a guy, what it takes to win at this golf course. A guy who is a great striker and hits the fairways. And when Tiger Woods won, the reason why he did was because he was hitting the fairways finally.
Consistency. Slow and steady wins the race. And Jim Furyk, he's a pretty good example of slow and steady right now. Looking forward at the U.S. Open in a few weeks. I'm getting really excited. It's going to be the 9th time the event's been at Oakmont Country Club, where guys like Hogan, Nicholas, Miller, and Els have won really the game's best, Tyson. How excited are you to see the U.S. Open returning to Oakmont?
I love the U.S. Open because it's always the toughest courses that they choose, the toughest venues in America, and Oakmont is top 3 in the U.S., where the rough is just ridiculous. The greens, when they played in 2007, they were arguing that the greens were just too difficult to play on, and then you also have a 300-yard par 3 that they were playing on as well. So many complaints about it, and that's what I love about the U.S. Open, that it's controversial in that sense. I mean, last year, Chambers Bay, how many complaints were there about the course? I mean,
endless amounts. And
a part of me is like, come on. But another part of me is like, all right, it's the U.S. Open. Why not? Why not have a little bit of controversy? So I always love this golf tournament just because of how difficult the courses are set up and how the USGA goes about their business when setting up the course.
I want a quick pick from you. If you had to pick somebody right now, a few events ahead of Oakmont and the U.S. Open, who is your pick to win the U.S. Open this season?
I would have to go Jordan Spieth. I think, like I said, when he catches on fire, he just keeps going with it. And this one he had at Dean and DeLuca gets him over that little slump he had. And I don't even know if it was really a slump. It was just sort of a win that was necessary, a win that can finally get him over a little rough patch that he had where he wasn't able to close out tournaments. Or, of course, at the Masters, everybody knows that. And also at HP Byron where he had the 54-hole lead. So having this win gets the monkey off his back, and now I think he's going to go into the U.S. Open fresh, maybe even with another win at the Memorial, who knows. Good finish coming into the U.S. Open week, so I like his odds.
If he does win at the Memorial, it will be very tough, and I mean very tough, to make a fantasy team or place any wager on anyone other than Jordan Spieth, because, as you mentioned, when he's on, and I feel like we're kind of copping out by picking Jordan Spieth as our guy to win at the U.S. Open, but, the best players win at the best courses, and even if I had to pick a guy behind Jordan Spieth, I'm looking at Day or McIlroy. These guys are all in their prime right now. They're all playing the best golf of their careers. Maybe McIlroy's not playing the best golf of his career, but he's playing great golf, and he's capable of winning at any venue, at any time.
I like to go with former champions at the U.S. Open where they've proven that they can beat the test that is the golf course. And Rory McIlroy just hasn't done that for me. When he won in 2011, that course was easy. I mean, when we're looking at U.S. Open standards,
it was one of the easiest.
That was probably one of the easiest courses that they've played, at least the way it was set up and all the rain that happened that week anyway. But I look at a course like Chambers Bay where it was a tough test because of the way the conditions set up and the way the USGA went about their business with the course. And Jordan Spieth was able to prove that he was able to win under those conditions.
Before we wrap things up, one last thing. Dustin Johnson had a extremely disappointing U.S. Open last year. Where do you see him right now? I mean, I know it's a bit ahead. We'll do another podcast closer to the U.S. Open for sure. But right now, if you had to guess where you see Dustin Johnson at Oakmont, do you think he can contend there? Or do you think he's going to have an off year at the U.S. Open?
He's one of those guys that every major I always look for him to contend. And I think it'll be the same this year. I don't think that he cares that much about what he did last year where, he's going to go into the U.S. Open thinking about the mistakes he made, and maybe he will. But I think he'll just tee it up, hit it down the fairway, and then forget about everything, really. I think he'll put the past behind him, and he'll have another good start, and I don't know if he'll be able to close it out, but I have him in the mix.
Yeah, I definitely think he'll be a guy to look for in the top 10 coming Sunday at the U.S. Open, but we'll have to wait and see. And of course, as I mentioned, we will be doing another U.S. Open podcast closer to the event, so make sure you stay tuned for that. And you can always follow along with the Fanalist Podcast on SoundCloud, on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. You'll get all of our updates there as well.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning into the Fanalist Podcast. I'm Tyson, and you can follow us at TheFanalystPod.